Hi everyone, I hope you're doing really well. A very warm welcome to this episode and a very warm welcome to part 2 of how to run a discovery day. Remember, the whole purpose of a discovery day is to see if there's potential for alignment that you might raise private funds for refurbishment as part of your buy, refurbish, rent, refinance strategy. So discovery days are critical in raising private finance. The first episode may well be helpful if you haven't already seen it, but assuming you're here for the second one, let's dive right in. And I've divided this into sort of 6 key sections, although do bear in mind it's fairly interchangeable sections and parts of it. It is at the end of the day a conversation, it's an intellectual, visual, auditory dance in terms of you getting to know them and them getting to know you. So it's interchangeable. But this is, generally speaking, the pattern and the format that we follow for our own discovery days when we are trying to raise private finance. And it starts with arriving there early. I like to arrive 15 minutes before 10 o'clock, if not 20 minutes, if not sometimes half an hour, and make sure I'm there. I'm not going to be caught out on traffic. I'm going to find a table. I'm going to make sure it's open. I'm going to go to the bathroom before, and I'm going to be completely set up. I'm ready to say, hi, welcome. And I'm just now all about them, not, where am I going to sit and how am I going to juggle everything. Then it's just a, hi, how do you do? If it's appropriate, shake hands. I like to shake hands. And I say, look, you get yourself settled. And while you do, I'm going to get something to drink. What would you like? And, we'd like a bit of cake with that or whatever. But whatever they ask for, go in and get it. Remember, you're going to take your wallet with cash and card, just in case. You bring it back to the table. And he said, look, really, really great to see you. Thanks for your time. How was the journey? And then it's, look, what would you like from the day? And at this point, I get out my pad, or it's already out, but I make sure I'm ready to write, and I have a pen, and I each time after they've told me something, I write it down, and then I say, is there anything else? I want to make sure I've captured all of their desires that they would like the day, which is about them, to cover. I want them to make sure they've left the door and gone home to speak to whoever they speak to, their business partner, their spouse, their wife, their children, their dog, and they feel this day has been helpful for them to have clarity on whether to move forward or not. So what are your objectives? And after each one, is there anything else? And when I say, no, that's it, I think, really, unless something else comes up in conversation, I draw a line under it and I make sure I refer back to those in the next few stages that I'm going to lay out for you. Make sure, and when you've done it, cross it off. Because then you can definitely say at the end of the day, look, I covered everything they wanted. Then, the stages 3 and 4 are very interchangeable. But essentially, you are going to tell your story, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. And they're going to explain their story. And when I say story, and who goes first, I'll answer that in a second. But if they say, look, I'd like to know a bit more about you, I always go back, for me, right back to when I first came across the idea of property. So I was teaching and I was in property, and I found out about property on YouTube, and this is what we're doing. A few years later, I decided I wanted to do this full time. I didn't feel a long-term career in teaching was for me for these reasons, and so my future looks like this. And I've done a business plan that aligns with that vision. And that might be the time then to get out your business plan, which we talked about in episode 1. It might not be. So, you choose your time, but you can have those resources ready to show at some point, I would suggest. But what you're going to do is say, this is where we were. This is what we'd like the future to look out. That's part 2. And we're in this transition stage from the past to the future. And this is like the third part of my story. And they're going to say the same. You're going to ask them several questions and get out that exact structure. So when did you first come across property? What made you decide that you thought about this would be a good idea for you? And what's your future objectives? And sort of how are you getting on achieving those at this present point in time? So you're going to find out those same 3 parts, but for their story. And remember, this is a conversation. It's a dance. It's an intellectual, visual, auditory dance. It doesn't happen in 2 clear, distinct stages. It happens simultaneously. But at some point, you might want to get out your documents that say, well, we've worked with private investors, we've raised funds, and this is how we analyse investor risk. And you might introduce your investor triangle, which we mentioned in the previous episode. So at what point you introduce your resources in this conversation is up to you, but make sure you're understanding the subtleties of the conversation. Is it right to introduce it at this point in time? But be ready to do it. And that might take an hour, might take an hour and a half, might take 2 hours. It really does depend. But I'll always at some point recommend, should I go and get another coffee for us? And always recommend a quick little walk round, stand up, stretch your legs, and also politely, it might be someone might need the bathroom. Just have a comfort break. So break there for 10 minutes. I'll just go and get coffee, and then we'll just carry on in 5 minutes. And then after that sort of conversation's happened, remember it might be lunchtime now, so you might want to get some food now at this point, or cake, or just something to keep the blood sugar levels up. They might decline, but make an offer, and then say, look, would you like to come and see a project that we've got on at the moment? And I've always taken our investors around a live project. It just so happened that the Discovery Days have happened when we've got projects on. But if I didn't have, our plan is to drive around the area and point out the properties that we own. And they'll come with you, or you can go with them, depending. I always like to drive because I know the area. But and then we'll just talk some more. We continue that conversation from stages 3 and 4, and they can ask questions about the area and what about that house and what's happening around here and what's the plan for the area. And they're going to ask you about your area, and it's a really good conversation because you know your area. And then at some point, you stop the car, and after the refurb, this is a point when they sort of end up going to go home, and you're going to go home too. And they sort of say, look, I hope you had a really good day. I've really enjoyed your company. It's been great to chat. Would you like to know the next steps? That's a great question. To summarise it, would you like to know the next steps? Now, I'm not asking for funds. Remember, the purpose of this conversation is to find potential for alignment, not their cash. And I say, well, look, the next steps are, I'd ask you, we have a conversation, and I'd ask you some questions. It's basically a Q&A. Well, it's not Q&A, it's ask you some questions about your identity that proves who you are. You've got evidence that you could come into a project, in terms of funds. Just so I know exactly who I'm dealing with for my own records. And you can ask the same about me. There's a KYC process, know your customer, and we have our own internal AML, anti-money laundering, set of questions as well, to make sure we're totally kosher, dealing with legitimate people and legitimate money. Are you against me asking those questions at some point in the future? They might say, well, I'm not so sure about that. In that case, the conversation might end. That's the end of it. But most will be like, yeah, that's totally cool, just let us know. And then later on, you have that conversation, and you ask your questions, and you make sure you keep an accurate record, and you abide by your own terms of business and your own data protection policy. And then at the end of that second conversation, I would say, look, are you okay for me getting in touch if an opportunity should arise? And again, I've always had a yes. And when an opportunity comes up, just say, look, do you remember that conversation when we met at this place on this day and we said we'd have a chat? Well, just so happens I've had this great little opportunity coming across my desk. Would you be interested, or would you know someone who would be? And then you go on to the next phase of the investor process, and you see if you can actually borrow some funds for a refurb. But that is the Discovery Day roadmap. That's the principles and the areas, the stages we like to try and cover, and that's how we do it. So I do hope you found that interesting and helpful. If you have, please give us a feedback. Please give us a like if you liked it. Please, it is really helpful to us. If you've got any comments or questions about it, then share those, of course, as well. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do. And if you hit the bell notification icon, you'll also be notified of every single time we upload new content. You won't miss out, and you'll be the first to know. So that's it for this one. My name is Josh Harrison. As always, thank you so very much for your support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.